Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this online message for Faith United Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Tom Schaefer, pastor of Faith United here in Toledo, Ohio. So this is the first week that actually we are also having in-person worship. We hope to integrate these two in some way, and so we'll see how that works. So the next several weeks will be a little bit of experimentation, I'm sure. You might not notice it on your end, but we'll definitely notice it on our end. But we are glad to have you here, and we hope for those of you that can't be with us for in-person worship that you'll continue to join us in this way. So we're going to be starting a new series this week, and I just need to start out by saying that as a pastor, and I've been a pastor since 1989 now, a long time. And as a pastor, I have the profound calling of being with people in their times of greatest joy and their times of deepest sorrow. Even tomorrow, that would be Monday, I have a funeral that I will be doing for a long-time older member of our congregation. But then there's also those moments of joy that I get to take part in, like the birth of a child or a marriage. And in those moments, our minds turn to the blessings of life, to thankfulness, to the goodness of God. But in our sufferings, in the face of death, in tragedy, our thoughts are very different than that. And the question that we ask often in those times is why? If there is a God, why would he allow a virus that has killed 400,000 people? If there is a God, why would he allow innocent people to suffer and die? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do bad things happen at all? Why would a loving God allow them? Why? It is the question we ask. And for the next 5 weeks, we're going to delve into the depths of that question through a look at one of the best known but least understood books of the Bible, the book of Job. Now, before jumping into Job, we need to do a little bit of an overview of the entire book. The reason we need to do that is that Job is essentially a long story that acts like a parable. It's 42 chapters in length. Now, obviously, I can't preach on the whole book in one sermon and do it justice. So preaching on this book requires some patience. This is a story that will unfold over the next several weeks. Each week will kind of be like a cliffhanger leading to the next week. They will build on one another, and we won't reach the point, the ultimate point of the book of Job, until the end. And yet along the way, there's still a lot to learn. So this is going to be a little like an extended Bible study, this series will. And something else here. I refer to it as a parable. I and a large number of other scholars don't believe the story of Job is historical. Now, to some people that presents a problem. For them, it undermines the credibility of the story. But follow me on this. The fact that a story is not historical does not discredit the truth that the story teaches. When Jesus tells a parable, we know the story didn't actually happen, but that doesn't diminish the truth the story teaches. It's the same with Job. There are many books of the Bible that are clearly intended to be historical books. Those books are written. They're written in a way that clearly indicates that they are historical. But Job is not one of those books. It contains none of the markers that would say that the author intended it to be read historically. Its purpose is its meaning, to address the question of why, which will be revealed over the next 5 weeks as we look at this book. So let's jump in. We're starting at the very beginning. Job chapter 1, verse 1. There once was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. The man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. Now, let's stop there. This begins like a story. There once was a man, right? There once was a man who had two sons, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. This is set without any time reference, and it is set in a land that no one knows where it is, the land of Uz. Moreover, Job is described as a man who is blameless. Does such a man exist? Did such a man ever exist? The Bible itself indicates that there is no one who is blameless. But for the purpose of this story, such a person is the perfect muse. And not only is he blameless, but Job is richly blessed. Let's pick up at verse 2. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people of the East. Job was a successful business person with an impeccable character and a moral compass. If this guy was running for president, it might be a unanimous vote, except for his partying kids. It seems that keggers were a regular occurrence for the Job family. Listen, we pick up at verse 4. His sons used to go and hold feasts in one another's houses in turn, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And when the feasts had run their course, Job would send and sanctify them, and he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This is what Job always did. So while his kids were no angels, Job still acted like one. He prayed for them every day, and he did what he could to right their wrongs, any of the wrongs that they may have done. Job was a good man. But something was about to happen to test all of that. One day, the heavenly beings came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." The Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil." Then Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you put a fence around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." So now 2 new characters enter into our story, God and Satan. We know who God is, the creator, Lord of all. We know who God is, but who is Satan? We think we know, but our preconceived notions may cloud what we are actually reading here in the book of Job. For first of all, Satan is a creation of God standing before God in heaven. At least here, he is not the full-blown evil figure that we see in the New Testament. Moreover, Satan, or Satan, as is the Hebrew word, is a title more than it is a name. Satan is a legal term. It refers to the prosecuting attorney. So here what we have, the scene is that we have the court of heaven with the prosecuting attorney standing before the king and judge. And the Satan's job, Satan's job, is to find fault. So God puts before him one who is blameless. Satan cannot find any fault. But he questions whether the reason for that is how blessed Job is. Satan asks an important question. He says, does Job fear God for nothing? Let's put this question in different words. Does Job love God because of how blessed he is? Or does he love God despite how blessed he is? If Job had nothing, would he still fear and love God? It's something we all face. When life is good, being thankful, having faith in God can come almost naturally. But what happens when we're going through a tough time? Is faith dependent on what God does for us, or is it rooted in something more? Think of it this way. Do you love your parents? Do you love your spouse? Do you love your children just because of what they do for you? Or is your love deeper and less superficial than that? That's what Satan is asking. So things are about to get real tough for the hero of our story. The Lord said to Satan, very well, all that he has is in your power. Only do not stretch out your hand against him. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. One day, when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the eldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were feeding beside them, and the Sabeans fell on them and carried them off and killed the servants with the edge of a sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was speaking, another came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 columns, made a raid on the camels and carried them off and killed the servants with the edge of the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came across the desert, struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they are dead. I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell on the ground and worshipped. He said, naked have I come from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrongdoing. Job loses all his wealth and all his children. And what is the first thing he does? It says he fell on the ground and worshipped. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Job is a better man than me. But that is really the point of the story. Job is blameless. I'm not. And yet Job suffers. And he does not blame God. However, this is just chapter 1. There is a lot of story left. And just because Job doesn't blame God, it doesn't mean that Job doesn't want an answer. An answer to why. So in the weeks to come, we will see that Job may be more like us than we thought. I hope you'll join me next week.